companies in the United States and New Zealand, and move those on. And he brings a completely different perspective and a huge amount of rigour to what he does. And I've seen one of his presentations before, and it's pretty exciting. So it's a privilege to have you here, Peter. Thanks for making the big drive up. And I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Sam. Hopefully I don't speak too loud. I probably don't mean this. Anyway, so Sam's given you a bit of background on myself. I've done a few different things, and I came back to Linnburn Station. Linnburn is a farm that's been in the family since about 1943, and I came back to it in 2007. I was living overseas at that stage, and I came back in 2012 and started living on the property from time to time. And that was really my first venture into hands-on agriculture. As a kid, I worked on the farm in my holidays, but never day to day. I was brought up in Wellington. So I'll get into it. That's where we are. It gives you a bit of a perspective. We're halfway between Wanaka and Dunedin. We're here. You've got the farm. You can see it's about 9,000 hectares. This is the south end or the southwest end. We've got irrigated flats of about 500 hectares going into this area here, which is the developed dry country. We go from about 400 metres to about 1,300 metres, about 26 kilometres long. That's it in winter, and that's summer. Okay, we get about 350 mils of rain, they say on average, but for this last year, we had a couple of years of 170 mils.
Do you have a green phase?
Pardon?
Do you have a green phase?
We do, thankfully. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons, I guess. The farm was built up. My grandfather had it. He died in 1986. He was big on irrigation. Then we've had managers, and they did the farming well, but maintaining the asset. I guess you could say fences and all of the like that. Things got let go. And I came back in 2012 and I'm going, okay, we've got to go and do this conventional thing, and we've got to spend a lot of money, and if I do this, I'm going to go broke pretty quick. Okay, so I'll talk to you a bit about it as we go through it. That's that same area after it's had cover crop and Leeston. Okay, then this is why we do it. I guess it's all about soil health, and it's about using the diversity of cover crops, companion planting, and zero till. So we don't do any till, we don't use synthetic fertiliser, we don't use fungicides or pesticides, and our whole focus is on trying to increase organic matter. And you can see it there, it's about healthy soil, healthy animals to produce healthy people. That gives you a bit of an idea of the diversity, or you can see the contrast, I could say. This here is in the rocks, and you can see this is cover crop growing up where you can see what it's like on the outside. Same sort of thing here, we've got some merino ewes with some cover crop in the background. Just gives you a bit of an idea of contrast. One of the things I have done in doing this is done a lot of investigation, I guess you could say, in that time. I came back in 2012 and what have you on the internet, and obviously there's a guy out of America called Gabe Brown, which I'm pretty sure most people here would know about. And this is the principles that he lives and dies by, I guess you could say, when it comes to soil health. It's limited disturbance of soil, keeping armour on the soil, diversity, maintaining living roots, and integrating animals. And that's kind of what we try to do. And so what we really focus on is obviously trying to use no-till and cover crops to improve our farm. This here is an example of a crimping roller, and I think it was Gwyn that was talking about it earlier. So what we're doing here is we're terminating rye corn and what have you. There's a few other things in there, and then just drilling straight into it. And so what you get there is you get a natural mulch that actually protects everything and allows the crops to come up through it. And also in doing that, you build soil.
Is that a cross slot?
That's a cross slot, yeah. That's it, being used without a crimping roller. So you can see a lot of the time what we're doing is we're not drilling into things we've sprayed out. we're just drilling in as we go. And we're doing it at different times. Right now we are drilling. We've drilled paddocks now to try and get stuff in the ground before the spring kicks, so you get the opportunity for that new seed to establish before everything gets away too much. And it's really, obviously that's not conventional. When we're focusing on cover crops and what we're doing, the first thing, and Gabe Brown talks about it, is what are your resource concerns? And resource concerns are what are you really trying to achieve? So understanding what is in your pasture. And it's like, what are your problems where you're trying to deal with? Is it your compacted soil? Are you trying to build organic matter? Do you need nitrogen? Do you need phosphorus, potassium? Are you trying to get the nutrient cycle going? Because what we're doing under the traditional system is we're putting, the actual energy for the plant to grow next to the root system, and we're not encouraging the actual biology in the ground to work. So are we trying to get that nutrient cycling and get the biology really working? Do we have worms or don't you? Do you have sleepy soil? In an environment like mine, I have a lot of sleepy soil. We don't have intensive animals all the time, and so we get sleepy soil weeds. So we've got biology, lots of fungi and bacteria in the ground, but they're not active. And so we've got to kickstart that, and we've got to use plants, and we've got to use biological primers, which is spraying, and I'll talk a bit about that shortly as well. Then what do you need to do after you've sown? So you're trying to think, what are you doing afterwards? Are you using animals? Are they going to graze it? What's the time of the year? You can see the other questions I've got there, and there's a lot of different things that you're trying to deal with. Are you trying to get birds and bees? Are you trying to create allopathic effects? Are you trying to get infiltration into the ground? And this is kind of an interesting paddock. This one here is one of the first, this is where the penny dropped for me. This is a very salty block. So in it must have been about 2013, I think, I was sitting with the farm manager and fertiliser rep, and we'd put ryegrass and clover in this paddock, and they'd put, given a certain fertiliser recommendation, and we'd gone out there and done that, and nothing grew. And so then I'm sitting at the table with this fertiliser rep, and I really didn't know a lot about anything really. Not something I do now, but I'm still learning. The thing the rep said, well, we said, what do we do now? They said, we'll just put that same fertiliser on again. And I went, okay, this doesn't make sense. I feel like I'm being sold something. So it didn't work, that didn't work. And so then I really got into looking on the internet, looking at Gabe Brown, looking at what people have done. And you can see in here, in this mix, one of the really good things in here was sorghum Sudan, and lots of other things. Sorghum Sudan is not supposed to be able to grow out so far south, because you need about 15 degrees ground temperature to get it to germinate and everything. But all these sort of things together then work together, and you can see what actually came up. And all of a sudden we had a paddock that hadn't grown anything, and now you can see what it's like, and it was gangbuster. And so what we had from that is, well, before I even get to that, in this area, what we did is visual soil assessments, and I'm sure you've all heard of Graham Shepherd, and we did visual soil assessments all the way through 200 or not quite 200 paddocks, and in this area we focused in on here, and these were the results. You can see here, this area you can't read it, but this said we didn't have any earthworms in that area. Okay, so we had no earthworms, but we'd gone looked at the texture and the mottles and everything, and evaluated everything. And we did some petrometer work, so we did this all the way through the farm, just looking at the depth and how far we could get a metal rod into the ground. We did VSAs and we recorded it. It's all on Dropbox, so we can do it. It's got GPS. And then that's what it all went to seed. You can see what happens there. We graze it, and then what do you know? Worms turned up. I don't know how, but there was no worms there when we're doing these tests. You do this, and then all of a sudden you got worms. Okay, and that's what's happening. Then you've got this here, and then it's breaking down. Okay, and we're drilling straight into it with the next thing. Okay, this here's another example, and what these are setup manoeuvres to go into perennial pasture, typically. Okay, so this is a setup mix as well. It's got a couple of perennials in there, but you can see I'm using the sunflowers. I'm using sunflowers as tillage. I'm using vetch in there. There's a lot of other things, and I'll talk about that as we go through and what we're trying to do. And you can see animals in it when it's been grazed. That's some of the different things that are in there. Vetch again. You can see all the bees, so you get the Phacelia, and it just brings life. It certainly makes you feel good. We've had the integrity soils guys down there and having a look at what's going on. There's an infiltration test. Animals in there smashing it, so you get this sort of thing happening. And then it breaks down. But now what I'm really going to bring to your attention is there was stuff on the line. It's not so easy to get. This was probably in 2014 I really got into this, and I spoke to Gabe Brown and started looking in America, and this is the USDA and how they look at the winter hardiness of things, and they measure different zones. So if you're up in North Dakota or what have you, it's cold and it gives you a temperature range, and then you correlate that to cover crops. Okay, it sort of tells you what environment it's good enough to grow in. Okay, and so then off the back of that, what I did is I built a spreadsheet and took a lot of data, and you probably can't all see it from the back. But in here, you've got all the different sorts of varieties of or species of cover crop. You've got maturity days, pounds, it's an American, carbon to nitrogen ratio, because they talk about it being 20 to 1. If you get 20 to 1, you get better decomposition. How it grows, the winter hardiness, that's where that previous slide comes into play. You know, so if it's a 5A, it's gonna go all right. If you've got buckwheat and you get a frost, then it's pretty much all over. So you do using buckwheat primarily in spring, I do anyway. And if I'm doing something in March, I don't put it in my mix. And so what is buckwheat good for? And you can sort of see when you come along here, well, it doesn't have a residue, does okay. You can see 1 to 10 controls erosion control. Grazing, not so flash, you can't really harvest it. It's okay at building soil. It's got a deep fibrous root. But what it does do very well is it renders phosphorus and potassium. Okay, and then it's very good for bees and the like as well. And it's okay with surface compaction. Then you come back and you can look, okay, well, I'm using a no-till system, so how am I cultivating? I've got sunflower. It's very good at subsoiling. It's very good at dealing with soil compaction. It's beneficial for organisms. It's got a big long taproot that goes down and has a pathway to be able to get nutrients from further down, but also when it dies, it decomposes there and other things can grow where it's been. So you're opening things up. So all of them are tools to do different things. You've got daikon radish. Radish does a similar sort of thing, where they're cultivated, so you're using different things to do different tasks really. And so this spreadsheet here, you can see I've dealt with these sorts of things. So you've got allelopathic effect, the growth time is fast or short, etc. This is a mixing bay, so we mix all our seed and we get things like this. So you get them mixed together and then we just throw it in one bin, or maybe if we've got Lucian, we'll use another bin as well. So we throw it in there and people are going, when you do that, is all the small seed going to fall to the bottom? Well, it doesn't, okay? It doesn't fall to the bottom, and it's not a precise science, this whole thing. It's just like getting the seed in the ground and putting your money on something growing instead of putting it in on fert.
How do you know what seed rate to put on with those mixers?
What I did, and I'll show it to you shortly, is I looked at a monoculture for everyone, and then I go and say, okay, well, if I make it up as I go pretty much, and so typically if I'm doing a lot, I might do 5-10%, or if I really want to get lots of sunflowers in, or tap roots to be able to open things up and get a big root mass, like sorghum Sudan, I might put 15 kgs. So you're just mixing it up, oats or whatever you're trying to do, to be able to get that root mass, because the more roots you've got in the ground, the higher the probability you are going to increase organic matter. Okay, so it comes down to what you're trying to do and when you're trying to do it. So I look at that sheet. My approach is, I'm not perfect at it at all, but it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything instead of going, I'm going to do 4, I'll do a bit of that, I'll do a bit of that, I'll do a bit of that, and I don't get worried about going to seed, because then it's only going to come back again. But this here is, what's the implementation strategy? Okay, so when I first started doing this, I did it under the traditional 5 litres of glyphosate, spray it out, let it, wait for it to all die, then drill. And I even did a bit of cultivation at one stage before we started that. And then I learned, hey, there's other ways to do this. And I just tried lots of different things. One of them was to not spray it out. Okay, so this is the preparation phase. You know, typically when you're doing it under the traditional system, you spray it out, you cultivate it, you put fertilizer on it, you prepare the seed bed, you know, you drill it, pre-emergent spray, post-emergent spray, whatever you do. It takes a long time. This here, we just graze it to the boards and don't spray it out. That's one option. Or I spray it with 1 litre of glyphosate with 4 to 8 litres of fish, 20 litres of humic acid. I might even put yeast or other things in there as well. Humic acid I make by using 100 kgs of humic acid, putting it at 1,000 litres of water and mixing it up. Using the crimping roller or stop to trample. So instead of trying to get full utilisation of the pasture, I might only eat 35–40%, trample the rest of it, create a mulch and drill into it. So, and the way you're setting up to do things, like if you listen to Gabe Brown, some of the times he goes and does any one of these. He's used a crimping roller. He's not big on it, but he'll go and do a cover crop mix in a first phase, and it might be in the autumn, and in the spring you'll wait for things just about before they go to flower, and then you'll do this, trample it, and then you'll use another mix to go in, and then at some stage you'll go in with an annual and perennial, but he's just kind of hitting the perennial mix or the existing pasture with a new species. And when you look here at 4, 5 and 6, that's a different thing again. So I do all these approaches. There is no, that's the way you do it. It's sometimes I'm using it and going, I'll just do it annual cover crops, and then I'll go into annual cover crops with perennials, and then again, and then I even just go straight in. So I'm not even taking it out. Like I said, right now, I'm drilling into Leeston that's dormant with things like that. People go, you're crazy in doing that. Well, I'm going, well, if the Leeston gets established and up like that, then I'm not going to have much of a chance to get the other stuff away. So that's what I'm doing there. This here gives you an example of that sort of thing. Okay, so autumn seeding. I don't use herbicide in our experiment, so you can see you're going in the autumn into existing perennials with what you see there. That's triticale, rye corn and vetch. Then in the spring, before it flowers, like I was saying, getting the stock to trample it, using sorghum, sudan, kale, daikon radish. Even Simon doesn't like it, but I like it because I get a big cultivator, and then it's a nitrogen sink that sets up for the next crop. I use annual ryegrass, buckwheat, sunflower. Repeat the autumn again, change it up, and then you're going into perennials. Sometimes I'm doing this step earlier, but at the same time I'm also doing biological primers, and I'll show you what that is. This is a book. If you haven't read it, I recommend you get it on Audible and listen to it. It is fantastic. I even listened to it on the way up here again, and I'm picking up new things that I didn't understand the first time around. So that is Gabe Brown. Here's the next part of the spreadsheet. If you want to know what the genus names are for these species, if anyone wants to start getting safflower in New Zealand, I had it about 4 years ago from Pioneer. If anyone wants to start growing it, that'd be great. There's a couple of other things. Cowpea, if anyone wants to start growing that, that'd be great. There's black-eyed pea. You got weed potential, so it looks at that, all these different items, how you can kill them, okay? And for people in arable, that's obviously very, very important. Then what I've got here is, the genus again, ideal planting time for each of them, germination temperature, that's in Fahrenheit, and then you can see what I've worked out as kilos in monoculture. If you're doing barley in New Zealand, maybe it's 150, but that's a guide, 5%, 3%, and if you're broadcasting. Then what I've got here is just the reseeding and what they're good at tolerating, and pH. This here is another dry country setup mix. You can sort of see it's mainly annuals with a few brassicas and a bit of other things. And once we've put that in, that's what it looks like. Then we get into more of what I'm about to show you now. This is the buckwheat, so if people doesn't understand buckwheat, black oats, different clovers, lucerne in there as well. So this one here is 8 kilograms of lucerne, and then I've got different copseeds, millet, lupins, phacelia, sunflower, lots of different clovers, and yeah, even a bit of annual ryegrass. That's what it ends up growing to be like. This here is an interesting paddock. A couple of years ago, from July to February, we didn't have any rain. Okay, we might got 5 mils and everything here. In the background, that's lucerne in October. Okay, this here was planted a few weeks before that. You can see what the symbiotic relations that plants do compared with lucerne that should be up and talking to us. And that's what Gareth, he's a farm manager, looking at it going, how does this happen? That's what Colin, who's here, I saw Colin came in and had a look at that day, and you could see what was going on, and I think Hamish did as well. Then that's another view of it, that's another view, and then that's what ends up, once it's been eaten, smashed to the ground, the lucerne comes back with all the copseeds and everything. Okay, this here is what we do. We do a lot of biological priming. In here I've got a 5,000 litre tank here, I've got a 30,000 litre tank over here of seawater, and we come up with mixes where we're using seawater, seaweed, fish, a bit of fine lime, which Simon's helped us out with, humate, and then if I've got a weed that I'm trying to get rid of, then I'll go and pick it, and then I'll decompose it for like 8 months or 5 months or whatever, then I'll throw it in this mix and try and put it out in that paddock that I'm trying to get rid of. Okay, so this is an idea of just mixes, so you can see it. So we've got a Chaos Spring sprayer, or you can get another tow and fert thing. And so we did about 800 hectares with that in this last season, and we're just gearing up to go again. And you can sort of see that it all comes down to your fungi bacteria ratio. You're trying to, they say you're trying to get a balance of 1-to-1 fungi bacteria. Gabe Brown says, I think it's 1 to 5 you can do with an intolerance, but 1-to-1 is what they do talk about. And like, I haven't really seen it myself, but talking to the guys on the farm at the moment, things have been growing when they normally don't, okay? And so they're really feeling that it's actually adding value for us. So you can sort of see we're using molasses, fish, hydroslate, seaweed, humic acid, seawater, and then making sure we're diluting it with other water. So the conductivity is, I think it's under 7, and using yeast, or brewer's yeast as well, fine lime, and the lime. And this here is another book that I recommend that you definitely listen to if you're interested in the subject, Growing a Revolution. And that's me. So if you want to get the presentation, text me and with your email or whatever, and your name, and I'll send it to you.
Thanks, Peter. Amazing. I found up in that time was a pretty good rainfall area, and would never dream you could grow that sort of stuff even in my rainfall area sometimes. So it's yeah, unreal. So appreciate all of that. Lost words. Right, questions for Peter, because I'm sure there might be one or two.
Seawater. Why seawater?
Seawater is nature's, I guess you could say, compost tea. So if you look at seawater, it's got all, seawater is nature's compost tea. It's got all the elements, everything's in there, and it's got a lot of biology in it, like bacteria and fungi. And so then you think of it, everyone talks about things running off the land and going, where does it go? It goes down the river into the sea. All we're doing is taking it back up there and encouraging it to do its thing. Nicole Masters, I've been to a couple of her courses, and again, it's like every time I go to one of them, I'm actually going, well, I didn't understand that first time, and I'm learning it the second time, and she's the one that talks about it. So all these different things like seawater, spraying milk to use, deal with nitrate poisoning, this all this sort of stuff, and very helpful. Yeah.
How much of an effect has it had on your stock performance in the time you've been doing it?
We've still got challenges in that area. There's no doubt about it. Our stock health can be a lot better, but you just, like weaning weights and everything are up. We're moving in the right direction. We've improved dramatically. And if you look online, there's even you can see life everywhere. There's guys that have been on the farm that are talking about the bees and the birds, and you just see it. It's just crazy. So, we've got really, really good soil to really, really poor soil on our property because we're, the diversity of the country, and with that you've got to deal with things. So the way in which we've dealt with that, from going to the courses with Nicole, she has a lot of reading from Pat Colby and that sort of stuff. So we're right into creating mineral feeders. So we've got about 30 of them that we drag around the farm with 6 little buckets, where we've got zinc sulfate or kelp and humate and things like Dan mix and that they can self-medicate with out around the farm to deal with any deficiencies as well.
Yeah. Are you straight merinos there?
No, we're half-bred.
Half-bred.
Yeah, so we're half-bred and Angus.
And do you notice any differences between the country you've done that to and the stuff that you haven't, stock performance-wise?
It's hard to. We've gone everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're at different stages of going different places. And to go and isolate because we're on rotations all the time, it's hard to pick an area and say, well, we haven't done anything there. If you understand what I'm saying. So we're in different phases. Some places we're 1-2 years into it. Other places we're 4 years into it. But every year we're learning stuff and improving what we do. So when it comes to stock, like I'm not the guy that's hands-on dealing with them day to day. But you look at, like I said, the weaning weights and everything, it's gone next level. Yeah.
Fertiliser bill from start to finish.
Okay, when we started out, we were spending a lot of money on fertiliser. At one stage, I was with this whole sort of thing. I was spending, let's say, $400,000. Okay, that's with seeding, cultivating, all the cultivation costs and everything. And in that, I was doing, might have been $65,000 worth of seed in there. Okay, now most of that money is going to seed. Okay, so I spend $20,000 on fertiliser.
So what your plants are harvesting out of the soil has become the fertiliser.
Yes, but here's the key thing in it. When I started out on the whole thing, I was doing, let's say, 200, 250 hectares. Now I can do 1,000 for the same money.
Peter, when you did the VSA on your soil, your profile of your whole property, did you measure carbon at that stage?
No. So what I had is, we used to utilise a lot of woofers, and one of the guys that came out was an Argentinian agronomist. And so he ran around, and we had Graham Shepherd come down and had him run around and do it all. He did it. So I've got a report and everything on it, so I've got a baseline on the whole property. We've got soil tests, we've got the visual soil assessments and GPS locations, but we haven't got the carbon.
Are you going to do that?
We have some carbon measurements, but it's sort of, it's like everything, you've got to get there. No, I haven't got to that level.
We're doing it, Don.
But yeah, from your side, Gwen and Land Care Research have been and done a few properties, a few paddocks, but we haven't done the whole farm by any sense of imagination.
Yeah, what's your, your vision in terms of, do you see yourself doing the cover cropping continue, or are you looking to get to a permanent pasture basis and you're using it to regenerate your older, brown top and Raceum?
I see them as the same thing. So cover crops, like when you look at cover crops, there's a lot of perennials that you can classify as cover crops. You go to cover crops of Canada and what you think is grass, they turn as cover crops in different scenarios. So what we're doing is we use cover crops, and I use perennials all the time. I've just got lucerne out of Canada. I wish I could get more more grasses out of Canada that are used to the cold, because ryegrass shuts down at 24 to 25 degrees, 26 degrees, whatever it is. Where I am, summer gets a lot warmer than that. So we're, with this whole thing, to give you an understanding, one other location where we went, hey, this is a bit crazy, is we had a very, very old Leeston pasture, might have been 20 to 25 years, and it wasn't growing, and we went to spray it with a big glyphosate and then put rape and some other things in there with it. Well, that came away, and then next all of a sudden the Lucerne came alive and took over. And so it's there and doing better than it ever has. So what did that say? It said, this theory of Lucerne's only got a term. It's it's all about making sure you've got the other plants in there that actually give it the will provide a symbiotic relationship to be able to manage themselves. And so it's what I was trying to show on that spreadsheet before, where I've got annual cover crops, and then perennials and cover crops. Is there's different ways of doing it. You just plugging and playing. And so when I'm going from one to another, I'm not spraying it out with glyphosate.
Yeah.
We're trying to just eat it down, or be able to get a mulch or what have you to then put the other seed in, and get away from, hey, I've got to get this yield, I've got to get it all to go, or that sort of mentality. Just accept that it's not always going to be perfect. And if it doesn't come this year, it's going to come next year. And I've seen that happen time and time again. Like we've put stuff in, Lucerne base with cover crop and that sort of stuff, and we didn't have any rain. And it's very slow in coming, but it comes eventually, and then everything, bang, it's unreal. So it's just sticking to the game, really.
Last question.
What's your thoughts on the amount of nutrients you're exporting off your property as meat or wool, and how do you feel about the replacement of those? Or do you not go with that theory?
What do you, with them eating the dry matter and it going away?
Yeah, so every year you're trucking meat away and wool away.
Yes.
From your property.
Yeah.
That has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's coming from your soils and sunlight and water and...
Yeah, but if I'm feeding the livestock with my livestock, if I'm grazing pasture to that sort of level, then I'm not looking after my soil. If I didn't have time to show you the photos, but we have cattle standing and stuff like that. Okay, and that's not just cover crop, it's rye corn and what have you. So you've got clover and everything. You've got rye corn that high with clover, and it's going to seed. So you smash that, and then you're feeding the biology under the ground. So it's getting into this mentality of you've got to look after the biology like you have to look after stock.
So are you going to run out of phosphorus at some point?
Yeah.
That's kind of
I don't know, like I'm not an expert on that sort of things. Like one of the things is, like we're not using synthetic fertiliser, but I'm not saying no to using like guano and that sort of stuff as well, with the biological stimulants when I need it. So we're not organic, where if we need to use something, then we will use it, absolutely, to change it, to be able to get to where we've got to go.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that. I think in this situation, when you've got this level of diversity and these symbiotic relationships, I've seen it personally as guys can actually grow their nutrient banks in their soils without any inputs, even with harvesting animals and cash crops as well. It's a bit hard to get your head around that, because we look at these historic approaches of fertiliser applications as far as mineral demand in certain crops in certain contexts, and so we have to replace that demand or that removal rate. You would have all been aware of this term, removal rate. I think that's sort of what you're talking about. In this context, it just isn't a factor. In fact, we can see them grow while still removing nutrients from the soil without even adding any, just from the symbiotic relationship.
Just like this year, I've got, when we get to eat some of these things, it's all gone to seed. Some of it's gone to seed, and so then all of a sudden it's going to go again. It's even going now. So it's getting into that crazy thing where everything's going to seed. It's not that perfect looking pasture. We get weeds. I don't worry about it. Okay, people are talking about weeds. Weeds are growing because the biology in the ground is saying there's a problem, and they're coming out to try and fix it.
And so now I've got to go and plant more stuff and spray other things to be able to change the environment, to be able to remove them if I want to remove them, or use the likes of something where I'm breaking it down and then spraying. So I'm breaking that product down that I want to remove and using that bacteria that's breaking it down and spraying it out to get rid of it. So instead of getting caught up in the whole thing. And so it's getting into a cycle where we're trying to get pastures a lot higher than in a traditional system, because what happens as soon as you get pastures up here, all of a sudden you create your own little microclimate down here. Okay, so it's like being in a greenhouse. So when you have pasture that high and you've got 40 degrees with the hairdryer going, the soil just is dry. But when it's that high and you've got that environment and you get a little bit of rain, then the moisture stays. And then all of a sudden the soil starts to, everything starts to work together. And if you've got all these root systems going everywhere, the roots are going, all through the soil profile, different types of roots, and it really changes them. I think that's about me anyway, so thanks very much.
Thank you.